Welcome everybody back to the DomCast, episode 19. We are here on a Monday morning. It was once again a busy weekend in life, busy weekend in basketball. Boy, things once again have changed. We have like 2 weeks left in the season, I believe. Most teams have about 7 matches left. Before we get into any of that, because there's just so much to discuss on that front, be sure to rate the show if you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Even if you're on YouTube, the like button apparently does something, so that would be nice. But do want to say, as we round out the season and get to the playoffs, appreciate you for listening all or most of the season. Yeah, I started like a couple of weeks after the season started. Anyways, this has been fun. Definitely been fun discussing basketball pretty much every week. Only took one time off. I think that was during the All-Star weekend. That dunk contest just wasn't inspiring. Anyways, why waste any time? Let's go ahead and get into it. Today we will be talking about, I'm going to start talking about the standings, and then it'll be basketball as usual. Oh my goodness. Yeah, see, it's Monday, bro. Here we go again. Yeah, standings madness because the play-in, of course, has made things far more interesting than they used to be. If that did not exist, yeah, gosh, it would be many teams eliminated by this point. The games that happened yesterday had a big effect on that. The standings have flipped on their heads, and they are going to keep flipping, apparently, with the performance of some of these teams. So if you woke up this morning, you hadn't really paid attention to basketball, which over the weekend, which you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast if that were true, you didn't notice the Boston Celtics are now first in the East. Yeah, at one point they were 11th. They were a very mid 500, below 500 team that had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on it, but looked as if it needed to be retooled. They are first in the Eastern Conference now, from play-in team to legitimate contender. 9-1 in their last 10, 6-game win streak, and then back to reality. There it is. Robert Williams has a sprained left knee, apparently. My hope was that this would be a situation of they're just trying to finesse some rest, because I know guys are going to be kind of in and out, which is really going to make this interesting when we start talking about some of these squad schedules as the season winds down. I'm sure a lot of these teams will be, if they're in position to, they'll be resting certain guys. So I was hoping it was rest, but then Ime Udoka said, oh yeah, he's in some significant pain and now we have to get an MRI. So it doesn't seem like it's just rest as usual. And I kid you not, I know the Dom curse is a whole bit, but watching the Wolves yesterday, I watched the Wolves game pretty much until it got out of hand, which was rather quickly. I was watching it just thinking, man, this is way too good to be true. This team is playing beautiful defense. Everybody's on a string. Offensively, it's just, this whole squad just looks like it has fun. And then I think to myself, injuries always happen to this squad at a time where things are at their peak. And I turned away. I was watching some of the Phoenix Suns and Sixers, and then of course I get on Twitter. Robert Williams is now randomly possibly out for a stretch of time. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed at the moment, because that'll destroy this whole thing. Boston is not contending without Robert Williams. They can still be good, but he is such a big piece of what they do defensively. It ain't happening without him. But for now, whatever information we have is that they are 47-28. They have overtaken the Miami Heat, who I'm pretty sure they play down the stretch. Miami Heat have fallen to second and may continue to free fall, because what the hell happened to that squad? We will be talking about them more in depth a little bit later, though. Bucks third, Sixers fourth. By the way, 1 through 4 is separated by half a game, so nobody knows exactly how these top 4 teams are going to end up at this specific moment. This could honestly go either way. The Bulls are a few games out of that. They're the 5th spot. It's starting to look kind of, especially with the way their season has gone, it's starting to look like they're going to be, I don't want to say stuck, but yeah, they're looking at 5th seed and below at this point. But look who slid into 6th. It happened, y'all. It happened. The Toronto Raptors overtook the Cleveland Cavaliers. I remember when Jared Allen first went out, that was absolutely my first prognosis. Said, oh, this is unfair. They're going to fall into the play-in. They're going to be stuck playing possibly Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And the first phase of that is pretty solidly happening. They're a game behind Toronto. I actually did not look at who owns the tiebreaker for that, but if the Raptors own the tiebreaker there, then it becomes very difficult for Cleveland to pass them again. Now, there was a game between the Charlotte Hornets and the Brooklyn Nets yesterday, in which the Nets defense faltered quite a bit. they were, and I caught basically the end of that game because there were so many other games going on before it. I saw Drummond making some solid defensive plays. Then of course Kyrie's first home game. So by the way, Kyrie is back. Kyrie is back. Probably should have said that at the very beginning. He is back for good now. He was cleared. Apparently the Yankees and whatever other teams up there had something to do with the mandate in the private sector. I had been saying for weeks, remember? We talked about it when he showed up courtside. I was just thinking, okay, well, now this is getting kind of awkward because it just looks like he should be able to play. And now he is. So he is, yeah, he's playing home games, he's playing away games, and the Nets are in the play-in. And they're probably, yeah, they're stuck in the play-in. So they're going to end up either a 7 seed or an 8 seed if they make the playoffs, which comes interesting real fast. Because when it was just maybe KD, that was one thing. Adding Kyrie to that, tired, different thing. Anyways, yeah, he was having a hell of a fourth quarter. But then your boy Cody Morton just decided that he owns Barclays. So the Hornets won that game. And what becomes interesting about that is they are tied with the Brooklyn Nets. They have a tie record. But that win also gave them the season series over the Nets, which means they own the tiebreaker. So now Brooklyn is 9th in the Eastern Conference. And if they end tied with the Hornets, I don't know, who knows if that'll happen because the Hornets do drop some random games. But if they do end tied, Brooklyn is now stuck in that 9th or 10th spot. So they would have to play in twice and they couldn't lose a game or they would be out, which who knows in one game scenarios. This one game scenario right now, they'd be playing the Atlanta Hawks with Trae Young. Again, it's just one game, winner take all. You'd never know what could happen. It's a lot of basketball X's and O's. Not that all of it goes out the window. It's just one game. All it takes is for some random to get hot, and then boom, everything is flipped on its head. So that rounds out the Eastern Conference. And man, we were talking about, and I had seen people talking about Brooklyn trying to avoid the play-in, which the math, it could work, but I just didn't see how that was going to happen. Now it's probably most definitely not going to happen. And if you're a 7 seed team, if you're a team like the Bulls, Raptors, or Cavs that is on the hot seat for that 7 seed, you're kind of happy about this, at least for the time being, because your first game wouldn't have to be against the Nets. Of course, if Toronto had a home court, Kyrie wouldn't be able to play in that game, so that becomes really interesting. But yeah, the East has just gotten really, it was already crazy, but what happened to the Heat this week was just, there's just a whole lot of what happening with the Heat everywhere, from Udonis Haslem and Jimmy Butler getting into it in the huddle, along with Eric Spoelstra, but that seems to have blown over already. That nobody's talking about it. It happened. Everyone just kind of wrote Heat culture on it and moved on. Although it is funny, it did draw a spotlight to the fact that Udonis Haslem is in fact still on the roster, pretty much just as I don't know what do they call Udonis Haslem's role. He'll come in and play if is it enforcer? No, that's wrong. No. Anyways, the Miami Heat lost to the Knicks. They lost to the Warriors, the Stephless Warriors, in which Jordan Poole was probably a big source of that frustration. They lost to the Nets. Now, the Knicks loss, that's a bad loss this late in the season. It's not a playoff team. I don't know whether to mention that Julius Randle isn't playing or not, because I'm not sure that matters. But basically, New York let it rip with some of the young guys, and they came back in that game. So I didn't even turn it on at first because I saw the score. I was like, oh, okay, Miami's handling that. There's other games on. Then I came back and the Knicks were leading. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Manual quickly happened. And they played solid defense too. The young unit they had out there was actually playing very solid defense on Miami. I go and review some tape of what Jimmy Butler does in that game and just what he's done in the losing streak overall. There's one specific play, shout out to Steve Jones Jr. on Twitter. There's one specific play against the Knicks where Jimmy Butler, I think he used a screen to get to the free throw line and get a pretty open jumper and brick it. And then the question is, hey, what does this mean in the playoffs? That one of the guys you need to be a top scorer is going to, from the mid-range, pretty much be a self-cover. From the mid-range and three-pointer is going to pretty much be a self-cover. That's kind of fascinating. It's kind of fascinating because there's certain guys that are like, there's certain players out there that are really big and just eat up space and put a bunch of pressure on your defense. And so the fact that they can't shoot, yeah, it still probably matters for the playoffs, to be honest. That's where things like that end up mattering. So that's actually pointless to bring up. He's a great finisher, but that's now, as we're getting late into the season and the playoffs are about to start, people are really kind of becoming hip to that. Butler does a lot of other things well. That one thing right there against really good teams just seems like it's going to matter. Oh yeah, they lost to the Sixers, by the way, too, without James Harden and Embiid. So that happened. So Tyrese Maxey happened, Emmanuel quickly happened, Jordan Poole happened, and it's just been a very tough stretch. That's 4 straight games that they've lost. I think I don't remember if it was the last podcast or the podcast before that, but I practically said Miami looks like they have the Eastern Conference locked up in the first seed. Nobody should, because they had a solid 3.5 game lead. So to lose a lead like that with few games left, you basically have to go on a losing streak. I'll just go ahead and tell you straight up, I didn't see them going on a losing streak this late in the season after playing great basketball with those teams specifically. And who was playing? Nah, didn't see it. So that has happened. And some argue it's a good thing because the running joke is, oh, well, if you get first or second, if the Nets make the playoffs, first or second is going to be playing Brooklyn. So yeah, running joke, avoid them. Even Ime Udoka did confirm that he's seen teams manipulate standings before. Says that he has seen that if the opportunity presents itself. So that's one thing, cool. But also, so the Miami and Brooklyn game happens, and it's not even competitive. It's not competitive. KD is getting whatever he wants. Andre Drummond is throwing up peace signs on fast breaks to dunks that he's handling the ball with. It just starts to get real questionable real quick. You probably don't want that team in the first round. To get out of the East, you're likely going to have to play them. That's one part. And two, in a game like that, this close to the playoffs, you want to be competitive. You want it to be a competitive game. You want to see some X's and O's that show, hey, we can give this team problems. And it's frightening because Kyrie, once again, is now there for the whole series. And once again, as I mentioned last week, Drummond has been a really nice piece for them. It's been a really nice piece for them as a rebounder. That was always his bit, right? Was, oh, he gets his own rebounds. But if you've been watching the Nets play, Drummond is rebounding the ball really well for them. He's even scoring well in some of these outings. So they've probably not going to see Ben Simmons this year, but they did get 2 pieces that I think they needed, in Seth Curry spreading the floor and in Drummond just being a big body. They did get some things that they needed to make a run, which is looking very possible. So that game at one point in the third quarter is 90 something to 50 something. And Miami can keep free falling down to maybe 4th, where they would get the Chicago Bulls. So you could argue this little Heat slide is not, it's well timed. You could argue that it is well timed because at this point, the way things have shaken out, you would want to play Chicago first in the first round. But also, like, with the problems that have presented themselves and the questions that we've had the entire year for this squad and half-court offense, pretty much that's really what it comes to, right? That's really what it comes to. It's offense by committee with this squad. We've been well established that they don't have a Kevin Durant. They don't just have a consistent, trustworthy, I'll just give you the ball and you go get these playoff buckets type player, because we don't know if Tyler Hero is going to be able to fill that role. And we know that Jimmy, we already know the limitations with him. So it's going to be interesting watching them trying to generate that. That's been the question all year. And so on one hand, yes, sure, propositioning to not play Brooklyn in the first round, but on the other, you still got to deal with that. You still gonna have to deal with that problem. The problem, Brooklyn, they've been showing pretty much in every game. So sure, they lost to the Hornets last night, but even in that little bit that I got to see at the very end, it's Kyrie just creating bullshit buckets, basically. It sounds bad because for a game as pretty as Kyrie's, but that's literally what they are. They are such bullshit. Just creating something out of nothing, getting to his left hand and hitting 50% contested shots. Those are the kind that just rip up game plans. And so, yeah, you probably don't want to rip up game plan team first. If Boston stays first, of course, that means we will be seeing them. However, I was encouraged by the game that they played in, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Again, Boston has, unlike problem that you have with Miami. If you're looking at Boston, especially the way Tatum is playing lately, how the offense is moving, and then how it's allowing Jaylen Brown to get his, I wouldn't say half court scoring is really an issue for them, unless you're able to exploit shooters around them, which lately nobody really has been able to. So even Peyton Pritchard is out here getting in on the action. Like, you love to see it, but gosh, they absolutely need Robert Williams. Absolutely need Robert Williams. So that's basically what has happened with the Eastern Conference play-in. The Cavaliers still have yet to get Jared Allen back. I am not predicting doom for them, but man, things just do not hit the same without him. Evan Mobley as a defender just does not hit the same without Jared Allen, which I will definitely be talking about him again a little bit later in the podcast because that's the topic. However, you watch the Cavaliers, and when it's Lauri Markkanen is at the rim as a team has gotten downhill, instead of Jared Allen, it's just not the same. It's not the same team. It's more of what I think we expected the Cavaliers to be when the season opened up. And so they are getting into that territory where they might get booted if they're not able to get him back. Just unfortunate if you're Cleveland. I would, at that point, maybe you're looking and saying you hate the play-in, because I do wonder where some fans stand with it. And your team has been playing great basketball all season, and they have one unfortunate stretch of like 3 weeks that puts the entire season in jeopardy. Because without that, they would probably still their whole 2.5 games into 8th that could be eaten up, but also still it wouldn't be as likely for them to fall out. That's tough. Anyways, the Western Conference got real fun last night. Oh gosh, yeah, this got really fun. This got really fun. We'll start in the back. The Lakers played the Pelicans. Oh boy, they did play. Brandon Ingram is back. Everyone came back for that game. Kind of needed it. And the Lakers were they were 9th. The Pelicans were 10th. There was a half a game separating them. And so this is like perfectly placed matchup. And this is where someone like me loves to play in. My team isn't really involved in it. You get to see chaos actually matter in the 9th and 10th seed. That would not matter at all without it. That game happens, and to start, the Lakers are on them. And they've been playing, up to now, they had been playing pretty good basketball. They've been playing, for the Lakers, they've been playing good basketball. So they had hopped on the Pelicans in that first half, and the thought is, oh, okay, this is happening now. Lakers are starting to maybe figure some things out, and they are dogging a team that dogged them recently. But this might be a little bit of a different Lakers team, and they're getting optimistic about getting Anthony Davis back. And this is a team that they would have to play in the play-in. This is starting to look like it can maybe, punch his chance type thing, right? LeBron rolls his ankle. Of course he keeps playing, because that's just what LeBron does when anything happens except the groin. Anything else happens, just ties his shoes and keeps playing. Harrison Fegan, big Lakers guy on Twitter, while they were up about 20 plus points, said, "Hey, y'all ready for a competitive third quarter for the Lakers to barely gut this one out?" I promise you, I turned to the game because the other ones were getting a little bit less competitive, and it was a 4-point game. The Pelicans had comeback that did happen. They go on to end up winning. CJ hit some clutch buckets. Brandon Ingram from the mid-range, of course. That was one of the more fun acts to follow at the beginning of the season on this podcast. So Brandon Ingram love, well documented. And the Pelicans end up winning. I believe that Lakers lead that they had was the biggest. Yeah, I think it was the biggest lead they had during the season, up to halftime. They blew it. I believe it was 23 points. They blew it. Not only did they blow it, they, because of that loss, fell behind the Pelicans at half a game. So the Lakers are now in 10th. Oh, and guess what? They also lost the season. They lost the season series. So they played the Pelicans again in a couple of days or whatever. But they don't own the tiebreaker regardless. So they have to have a better record than the Pelicans to avoid being in 10th. But wait, there's more. They are one game in front of the San Antonio Spurs. Spurs also own the tiebreaker, and the Spurs play them before the season ends. But wait, there's more. The Lakers' schedule is absolute hell coming down the stretch here. I don't think I read out the schedule aloud last podcast. So tomorrow they play the Mavericks, then they play the Jazz, then they play the Pelicans, then they play the Nuggets, then they play the Suns, then they play what we assume will still be the Stephless Warriors, then they play the Thunder, and they play the Nuggets. The only quote easy win there would be the Thunder. Of course, Josh Giddey is gone for the season. Oh gosh, don't tell me my lo-fi was playing in the middle of me speaking. I will fight somebody. Cool. Yeah, no, the Josh Giddey's out. Who knows what Shea Gilgeous will be at that point. This is where I was talking about earlier with the schedules. We don't know who's going to be playing when. So by the time you get to April 7th, April 8th, like, are the Warriors going to be playing anybody at that point? They might. Maybe they're trying to hold on to the 3rd seed. Again, standing manipulation. We don't know what everything is going to look like. So don't know who will be playing in some of the games as it gets later. But it just, by the way, I got something, my bad. The Lakers don't play. I just read that out loud. Ignore me. The Lakers don't play the Spurs again. Spurs just own their tiebreaker. That's what happens. I could have sworn they were on the schedule. No, they don't play San Antonio again. Ignore me. That's my fault. But yeah, no, they do own that tiebreaker though. And so just at face value, tough schedule, between two teams you don't own the tiebreaker for. But wait, there's more. LeBron James said his ankle is terrible after last night, so it was a pretty bad roll. Like, I'll give him that. It was, look at the still image, it's one of those that would put any other player out. But he said his ankle felt horrible post game, and his availability is in question as LA continues a crucial stretch. Yep, he did do the whole tying shoe thing. That did happen. This is back to what Heat Check said, right? Heat Check was on the pod almost a month ago. Said that he thought at some point something would happen, LeBron will eventually shut it down. If I were the Lakers at this point, I would just go ahead and shut LeBron down. I just don't see the point. I'm sorry, I don't see it. He's dealt with ankle. He's been resting a knee in the middle of these. Like, they don't have time for him to rest if they really want to make the playoffs, but they've been doing it anyways. He's been resting that sore knee. Now you got an ankle on top of that. You're 10th with very slim prospects at this point of making a play-in. And your reward for ending up in the play-in, your reward is playing either Memphis or the Suns. You could argue, hey, we'll get Anthony Davis back, we'll be different, we could make some noise, and we have to do everything we can because LeBron, we only have probably a year of him left, so any chance we have with him, you just kind of have to let it rip. So I get that. But also, this is looking dangerously like the 2013 Lakers season. It is like, this is literally how it happened. I could make the video. I hadn't made a video on it yet. I guess I'd probably just wait until the Lakers season is over. This is the entire 2013 Lakers playbook. Guys go in and out the whole season. They have a miserable record most of the season. One guy on the team puts up incredible numbers and Herculean efforts to keep them competitive. And at the end, by the end of the season, that ends up working against them. And then it alters a career. Like, if I was LeBron, now at this point you have hurt your ankle. And he said it took all his explosiveness, which he did. He was settling for jumpers at the end of that game. I would literally just go ahead and can this season and try to fix it next year. But, yeah, maybe they see it the other way, though. Hey, we have a year of this guy left. We're going to get Anthony Davis back. As long as we have a chance, we're going for it. All right. Well, all right. That might be what happens. But yes, the Lakers' chance of making the play-in right now, they have a better chance of not making it at this specific point with these new developments. So that happened. That was actually worth talking about because that's pretty significant standing switch. The Nuggets, since we've done the podcast, have gained a whole game and a half on the Minnesota Timberwolves. So they're still in the 6th seed. Nuggets are not in the play-in yet. The Jazz have lost 4 straight games and fell to 5th, though. Fell to 5th. Hassan Whiteside didn't play yesterday. Gobert didn't play. So the Mavericks are able to get that win. And they are now a game ahead of them. And they can also, the Mavericks can get up to 3rd. So that'd be interesting to see if Luka replaces Booker on the late MVP should be ballot. Because that's happening right now. That's a topic that we'll be getting to. Other than that, things are kind of the same. The Warriors' life without Steph has just been tough. It's been very, very tough. Draymond Green has come out and taken full responsibility for how terrible he's playing. He's having some games with only 3 field goal attempts, which I get. It's not his goal it's not really his job to score, but this time that Steph is out, They need a little bit more from him than screens and passing. Like, it's need a little bit more. Jordan Poole is doing what he can. Klay Thompson also doing what he can throughout this rehab, but they lost to the Magic, lost to the Spurs, they lost to the Wizards last night, the Kuzma-less Wizards, and it's just not great momentum going into the playoffs. As Coach Kerr says, we just don't know how to win right now, which is wild. Say this close to the playoffs, it's not a great situation. Hoping they can get Steph back. Chris Paul came back. CP3 did in fact come back. Suns have won 61 games, which can probably, because as far as standing madness, I think that's pretty much it. That's most of the situations. Most of the situations there have been addressed. You can flow right into the Phoenix Suns have done this season. Just been incredible. They survived without Chris Paul. Of course, they were so far ahead of second seed, there was almost no chance that they were going to fall anyways. And now that he's back, they've lost only 14 games this year. And that's what's really crazy about that 14 games they lost. They a lot of the season they were missing Aiden, and then of course they were missing Chris Paul, like we said. And what would their record be if they just had been healthy the entire year, which doesn't really happen these days. But there was a point in time, I feel like in my NBA fan life, where it just seemed like teams could stay healthy for a lot of the year, if not most of it, or if not all of it. Like a team would just be a contending team and guys weren't constantly in and out. That did seem like it was a thing at one point. It doesn't matter, whatever. Phoenix has won eight straight games. They beat Philadelphia yesterday. And what spawned from this is, hey, why isn't Devin Booker in the MVP conversation? How long have you been listening to the podcast? Are you a listener that's been here since day one when I started it? Do you remember at the very beginning of the season, the very, very beginning, where I thought that, you know what, as a matter of fact, my bad. It might not have even been the podcast. I think it might have been a video I made. I don't know. Anyways, somewhere out there, I thought that Devin Booker was going to be the Suns MVP candidate this year. I thought it was going to happen. He's the best player on Phoenix. And I said, if Phoenix can repeat that success and Devin Booker is having a good season, he'll probably get those MVP nods. But see, what had happened was Suns repeated their success. Chris Paul got all of that. He got every MVP nod and fake vote that I thought Booker would get. It went to CP3. It didn't happen to Booker. So that did not happen. And it looked great. We're not going to forget the stretch where Chris Paul was making star big men out of Bismack Biyombo and Jalen Smith, who's no longer on the roster. When Aiden was out, it was like, okay, cool. Well, you have a breathing human that can roll, great. And that's basically how that was going. So Chris Paul was getting the love. I think he was up to 5th at a certain point. Knew he was never going to win it. Just the numbers simply aren't there with the other guys in the race. But nonetheless, now when Chris Paul went out, the Suns, for the most part, kept winning. Devin Booker doing his thing. So drops around 50 on the Nuggets the other night. Just another mid-range masterclass. And you're starting to get this from everywhere. I see John Morant talking about it. See sports shows talking about it. Just going everywhere. Hey, wait a minute. Why isn't Devin Booker in the conversation? He's the best player and the best scorer on the best team. Why is he not in the conversation? Well, I'll just say, first of all, that again, I thought from the beginning of the season, this is kind of where I thought it would be. I thought that he would get that love. And so I thought he would be on the ladders, at least. So it's nice to see he's on the ladders. He's on the fan ladders. Is he actually on the... Has he moved up this week into the MVP ladder? Did he get that love? Let's see, just updated for the week, obviously. The MVP tracker. I don't think so, y'all. Tatum is there. Luke is there. Okay, so Devin Booker is there. Okay, cool. So he's on 7th. He's moved up to 7th. So that, if you count that as being on the ladder, he is on the ladder. But caveats: Devin Booker's not winning MVP. It's not gonna happen. It's not happening. It so far has not changed the big 3 of the MVP race that have been there pretty much most of the season. Nobody has yet to replace them. Jason Tatum has gotten the closest. He's now 4th. Obviously, Boston has been the best team in the year 2022. Tatum upped his play. That's a big part of that. So rightfully so, he's gotten his love. Luka, same thing. Mavericks came back from, oh, they were never dead, but came back from pure mediocrity, became a really good team. Luka is doing his Jordan routine, so he's made the ladder. He's top 5. But look, it's cool. The Booker praise is cool. It's just the praise I thought he was going to get in the beginning. I just think there's a way to do that without thinking that he has to win it or that he's going to win it. Specifically, if you're asking like, oh, well, what is he missing to win? If his team is this successful and he's a big part of that, it's very hard to have an argument over the top 3. That's literally it. That's literally it. It's in 2K, when you do these awards, they have this glitch where the same guy ends up winning damn near every year the defensive player of the year, because it's just, there's him and then there's everybody else from whatever metric they use. I'm not using 2K to justify it. I'm just kind of drawing that parallel to where, all right, well, you have a Giannis that is casually putting up 30, 12 with 6 assists and then also playing defensive player of the year defense. Just kind of by default, it's almost impossible to be a quote normal player or a really good player and pass him in the standings unless his team is just falling off a cliff, which it hasn't. Like Milwaukee's still at the top of their respective standings. Now their record is significantly worse than the Phoenix Suns, but just again, talking about value, talking about player to player, Giannis, it's not gonna happen. You're just not gonna pass Giannis. It's not gonna happen, man. It's not gonna happen. The Suns were to go without Booker. Obviously they wouldn't be contenders without Chris Paul or Booker. Like legitimate, they wouldn't be able to get out of the West without Chris Paul or Booker. However, they can still put together something without one or the other during the regular season together. The Bucks could probably win some games without Giannis sometimes, but also if you were to go apply that same thing without Giannis, that's a completely different team. That team is not probably competitive for much longer. Anyways, I'm using a lot of words to just say Giannis exists. Giannis exists. Jokic exists. Same thing. 26, 14, 8. We've been all through what he does for that team, and I do want to be fair and say, having watched Jokic pretty much this whole season, I don't think his defense is as great these days as it was to kind of start the season. Seems like it's tapered off a little bit to me. I see him get cooked sometimes like I wasn't seeing at the beginning of the season. However, it's just there's not a lot of discourse on Jokic defense, so it's not really what people spend their time talking about. Normally it's just oh, he doesn't play defense or he can't play defense, which sucks because that's how you could tell who doesn't really watch him at all. I saw like a thread where a guy was making good points this week, and then I think his second or third tweet was, oh, I never seen Jokic play defense in my life. And it's like, okay, all right, so you just hadn't really paid much attention this season. But I can be fair and say his defense doesn't seem as great as it was. I talked to some Nuggets fans while I was watching. I was like, is his defense falling off to you? And they're like, yeah, but he is doing everything else, so that kind of makes sense. Maybe I don't know if saving it for the playoffs is where I would go, but I am going to keep an eye on it because I do wonder, once you get to the playoffs, you're going to see it closer to where it was at the beginning of the year. Anyways, yes, yeah, no, you're seldom passing Jokic in this MVP conversation. It's just kind of been like that. And then, of course, there's Embiid, who, for a second, was first in the East. So he's fighting for first in the East right now. He's had his MVP year. He's had his MVP case going strong the entire year. Those three just have not been replaced. And I think it's okay to love what Tatum has done and love what Luka has done as the season continued. And then love what Booker has done while also acknowledging there's just probably no chance that they'll end up winning it. Like, even with Tatum, I wonder, okay, Boston's first now. They can't play much better than they have. He can't play much better than he has. I don't know what brings him from fourth right now to first in a couple of weeks, unless Boston just wins every game and these top three lose most of them. Yeah, that's basically it. But I'll rage with you though. I'll be angry with you that Devin Booker hadn't gotten a mention the entire year, because that's where I thought it was going. But it's hard, I guess, when you play with another guy who brings immense value. It's just difficult, especially because the people who vote on these, you realize after you see some segments go around on Twitter of some actual voters talking, you realize, hey, these voters are just humans too. They're not robots who know everything. They have their own criteria. They have their own biases. They have their own correct or incorrect thoughts. and that's just kind of how it goes. So yeah, sure, Devin Booker should have been talked about before now. And maybe if he had been, maybe if Booker had gotten this this type of attention beforehand, and it wasn't like Chris Paul and his leadership, yeah, you probably would have seen him like 5th or 4th. Still don't think he'd end up winning it. But yeah, the Suns right now rolling, and given the health of other teams in the West, if they just take what they've done this season and translate it, they should be fine. The Suns team is not a super team, but they are a juggernaut. 30-6 on the road, 31-8 at home. It's just like that. 36-9 in the conference. It's like that. You know who else is like that? The Ja Morantless Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morantless Memphis Grizzlies, last time I looked, I think they were 17-2 without him. Now it might have moved to 18-2. A little bit worrisome. He is missing games this late. They said he's tweaked his knee, so he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, which is, once again, 2 weeks now means basically playoffs. So keeping an eye on that, but hopefully it's just some rest because they can clearly play without him. And they got like a 30-point dub on a healthy Bucks team without him. Because this team is just serious. That's pretty much where we've landed. We've been wondering, what is this team actually the entire season? When Ja is, first of all, I don't even know if I should really get into that, but just without Ja playing, how they keep surviving. They just have multiple guys that do things, man. The ball moves, still have many weapons on offense, many places to go. Dylan Brooks can sometimes get downhill, get you a floater. Of course, Desmond Bane, we already know what he brings, even on the defensive end as well, giving people miserable nights. D'Anthony Melton's gonna come off the bench. He's gonna give you threes. He's sneaky athletic. I say sneaky athletic because sometimes he'll pop out with the dunk, and you're just like, oh yeah, he does that too. John Morant, of course. Jaren Jackson. Yeah, Jaren Jackson, both sides of the ball, especially on defense. I've watched him win a game with defense this season, more than one. He's got his thing going on offense too. They literally run him off a screen sometimes, and he'll catch and shoot as a big, which is just a fun thing to watch. Having grown up with what basketball was and what it's turned into, it's just great stuff. Memphis Grizzlies are just a all just well put together team. And no, they cannot win without Ja Morant. Let's not do that. All right, let's not do that. And I don't see a lot of people doing it. Hopefully, what you look at with the Grizzlies is just going and saying, "Hey, this is a great team. They were constructed good, and they have many weapons, and have a lot of young guys that are still developing. And the fact that they can play without their MVP candidate is just a testament to how good they are as an overall team." In the playoffs, you still need your MVP candidate because things become interesting when all of a sudden you don't have to, like, say they would have to play part of the first round without Ja. Now it's, oh, okay, cool. We don't have to worry about him attacking us off the dribble and creating all types of gaps in the defense or putting in a rotation. Oh, all right. Well, now you just have to stop a well-rounded offensive attack, which I just think is probably easier than stopping a well-rounded offensive attack with Ja Morant on it. So no, it's fun. It's fun to, I don't know, jab at how good the Grizzlies are without him. But no, it's not happening without him this season. I don't know if it's happening with him. But yeah, let's hope he's just back in the hole by the time the playoffs start, because he and Steph, like, I just don't like this territory we're in where it's oh yeah, we're optimistic and oh, we're gonna reevaluate him right as game one of the playoffs starts. I dislike it a little bit. I definitely dislike it a little bit. And yeah, as far as those top teams, that is pretty much it. Dallas, once again, see if they can get to third. Just a whole lot of things happening with these standings. As far as some potential playoff matchups, because now after this I'm just going to get to my regular topics as we close out the standings. Yeah, Minnesota and Memphis obviously be a lot of fun. They have to play their way into that, but that could be a lot of fun. You could get something like Dallas and Denver, which I had wanted anyways if they're not going to play the Jazz. So that is an opportunity if they're going to leapfrog Golden State. Then that would give you Golden State and Utah, which I think Golden State be honest with you, I think they want that matchup. If you get Steph back, I'm pretty sure they would like that first round matchup. So That's a thing. Suns gonna eat whoever. Oh, Paul George, by the way. Paul George, it's starting to look like he's gonna come back. Starting to look like Paul George is gonna come back. He's doing workouts. We had Vini on the podcast a couple of weeks ago who basically said the same thing, but now he's returning to regular basketball activity. Seems like he's ramping up. I'd be surprised if he wasn't back. So that would at least be fun. They're not beating the Suns with him, but it would at least be fun to have Paul George back in a scenario where they could play their way into 8th or 7th. Paul George, yeah, makes the Clippers fun. Big news there. Eastern Conference, of course, we already went over the fact Brooklyn will be playing one of the top 2 seeds, but one of the top 2 seeds could mean anything right now. Chicago is trying to snug their way into that 5th spot. You fall to 6th. That could happen. Toronto is on one. Toronto is definitely on one. Scotty Barnes might be taking the Rookie of the Year. Actually, I think that's kind of where we're gonna go next, because yeah, these standings are just all over the place still. 7-2 right now, Cleveland, Miami. I'm actually not really interested in that series. I mean, I am, but as far as like all the other stuff that could happen, it's not chaotic enough for me. Anyways, as Cleveland and Toronto are on the docket right now, so Mobley versus Barnes is basically the Rookie of the Year race at the moment. Like, Franz Wagner has been good. Cade Cunningham came back after his injury, and he's ramped up. I'm super excited for year 2 Cade, but being that his 2 counterparts are playing good basketball, they have been playing good basketball all season, and they're in the playoffs, it's probably not happening for Cade. It's basically between those 2. It's been Evan Mobley for me most of the season. That's pretty much been what you default to. Cleveland was top 4 for a lot of this time. When you had Evan Mobley on the floor with Jared Allen, defensively, you're just going, what do you even do with this squad? It's a tough overall situation. Oh, okay, this meeting starts at 11 o'clock instead of 11:30. Cool, that's just amazing stuff. Fuck me, right? Anyways, man. Yeah, so Toronto now 6. They've leapfrogged Cleveland. That's the scenario we talked about last week. It kind of comes down to, once again, what you value as a voter, and just as far as what you see on the court. I mean, Scotty, both of them are super raw talents as rookies, obviously. And Scotty right now is a lot of fun to watch. Big forward, can play multiple positions. Is going to be able to do a little bit of everything as his career progresses. Right now, the shot is not necessarily a thing, so it seems like it would be easy enough to go, oh, all right, well, we're just gonna sag off and switch some that type of deal. But also, again, Scotty's he's a big body, and so right now he literally just eats up space and just backs you down and post hooks and just does little flip shots. It's a really raw game, as far as offensively, anyways. It's a really raw game, and it's gonna get a lot better. But for right now, it suffices. They need him to play some point guard. He can do that. I watched him strip Darius Garland this week, so that was a fun experience. Darius Garland, obviously small, quick guard, and Scotty Barnes, tall, lanky guy. Darius tries to get around him. Scotty read that beautifully. Just absolutely ran his pockets. That was a nice stop. Like the effort that he shows. I do like the effort that he shows on defense, for sure. He had a stop against Indy this week. I mean, it was on Lance Stevenson in 2022, so that's one thing, but it was just the effort that he showed on that play to put Lance in a box. I like what Scotty does. And there's Evan Mobley, who, same thing, defensively for most of the season, looked just absolutely incredible. Obviously, he had the buffer of a Jared Allen. His game is also very raw, but he knows where to be off ball, knows how to play with another big that doesn't even really shoot. So that's a big plus. That's a big plus on how that's worked. The thing that's hurting right now is we're getting really close to voting, and Scotty he just took home Rookie of the Month, playing great basketball. His team has leapfrogged Cleveland in the standings, and defensively, now that Mobley is being asked to guard bigger guys, he's playing bigger guys, playing centers. It's tough because same thing, the rim protection without Jared Allen don't hit the same. Mobley's defense, I would say, doesn't really hit the same either. It just doesn't. You have a bigger body, you have a big body like Vooch. You remember this? Evan Mobley still has kind of like a kid body. He's really tall, but as far as like the weight and whatnot, and the weight and the strength, it's not necessarily there. It's not necessarily there right now. So you see him you see guys challenge him a lot. You'll see guys challenge him a lot, and it's not the same as the help defense that comes over, or just being able to play defense with your instincts. It's not quite the same. And so I am interested to see how far up the Raptors go and how far back the Cavaliers fall, and if that changes it. There's still an entire year to consider, and I do think there was a point where, and Scotty has been impressive the whole year to me, but I still do think there was a point where it was like, oh yeah, he's doing okay. And Evan Mobley, it was like, wow, he's doing amazing. There was a nice part of the season where it seemed like that was happening, and that is part of the voting. So I'm really interested to see where it goes. The Raptors, the farthest they can move up at this point is 5th, and then Cleveland could fall completely out of it. So I don't know. It can't just be all standings. And knowing how the voters, or not knowing how the voters vote, is a big part of the confusion with this. It's the same thing that's about to happen with the all NBA teams. If you hadn't heard, all NBA squads, for the 3rd year consecutively, by the way, the Embiid and Jokic would be able to make it if one of them was a forward. So that's one thing, right? That's not really the issue with why one of them doesn't make it in a year like last year. It's, are voters gonna band together and vote together and make one of those guys a forward so that they can both make the first team? Because they're clearly both first team talent. And if we didn't have any question on how the voting was actually going to happen, okay, cool. Giannis, Embiid, Jokic. That's 3 of the first team right there. That's 3 of the 5 for the first team, just automatically off rip. That just happens. Same thing with how the MVP race is. The issue is we don't know if that's going to happen, and you're trying to look to last year for guidance, because a lot of people are saying, oh, the voting was the same last year, so why does this change anything? Why is this even news? Well, to me, it was news because Embiid, remember, he missed 21 games last season. He was pretty much leading the MVP race, and then he got hurt. And so the fact that he missed so many games, and sorry, I just got notifications going crazy. There's a meeting soon. I hate that I thought it was at 11:30. Whatever. Anyways, yeah, so this year that didn't happen. There weren't injuries this year. There weren't a lot of injuries this year. There wasn't a big chunk of time missed by really either candidate. So they've both been playing elite basketball, and they've been neck and neck for MVP. So it just kind of feels like they should both be first team. However, if there's not coordination, one of them is probably going to get center votes and one of them can get forward votes. And if there's not enough coordination, then boom, one of them is going to be on the second team. It's going to end up happening, and I cannot wait for the chaos of all NBA squads, all 3 of the teams, by the way. Because if you just go through and rip off names for all NBA, let's just like see how many names you can get. So yeah, Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, obviously those 3 are all NBA. And I'm not doing the teams, by the way. I'm just naming the players. So you got John Morant, of course. LeBron James, still all NBA. It's been a bad season for the team, but he's all NBA. KD, Steph, he's there. Luka's there. Trey is there. I'm already up to 9 players. There's how many spots left? DeMar DeRozan's all NBA. So I just got 10 just without even really looking at the teams here. I just got up to 10 all NBA players. You get to that last 5. Tatum's all NBA, so that's 11. Jimmy Butler gonna get all NBA this year? I feel like before I get to Jimmy Butler, I could, yeah, Chris Paul and Devin Booker all NBA both. Yeah. So what was that? Did I just get 12 and 13? So you see what I'm saying? It becomes, because I haven't even gotten to a Donovan Mitchell yet, who's also been all NBA. And then there's names like Cat out there, and then is Gobert gonna get a nod? And now the questions come, because there's some dudes that have been left off. Like Raptors fans are going, "Hey, is Pascal Siakam all NBA this year?" And then again, that was without naming Jimmy, I believe. So it gets real fun. It's gonna be chaotic, especially when one guy gets knocked down to the second team. That it's just going to be extremely chaotic. The second team could potentially end up looking like, because of the time missed, I think KD will end up second team. Same thing with LeBron James, he'll end up second. And so if one of the 2 fall from the first team, now you've got Jokic or Embiid down there on the second team with them. So 3 of the 5 second team could be KD, Braun, and Jokic or Embiid. That's just fun. That's going to cause so much anger, and I'm all here for it. Because on a typical day, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to underrate the value of all NBA. Those things don't matter. I'm not going to. It's more of like the races I really don't care about. It's more like the rookie of the year. It's nice, but also I just think back to, okay, every single year, can I tell you who the rookie of the year was? and you get to a time where Joel Embiid couldn't play much, so then Malcolm Brogdon got it, and sure, he's a good player, but like, okay. Anyways, so that happens. The All NBA team thing is going to happen. We'll see how they vote on it, and then Twitter's going to lose their collective minds almost no matter what happens. That is going to be a lot of fun. Speaking of Trae Young, who was listed as an All NBA member just now, yeah, in New York, he absolutely went off. It's kind of moot at the end of the season. Both those teams are at the bottom of the standings. Atlanta's is not going to fall out either way, so the only question is whether they're going to have 10th or 8th as far as a play-in seed. But yeah, the whole Trae Young and New York thing is fun. I guess the reason I had it written down was because it was the first time that he's gotten to play them since the playoffs, and it was poetic, man. It's poetic. The game was close. I heard Trae Young sucks, like audibly by someone in the crowd, or yeah, Trae, you suck. And 15 seconds later, Trae's hitting the 3 that ties the game. And a couple of minutes later, he puts Taj Gibson on the floor and hits one from the free throw line as the Hawks start to pull away. So you start to think about this whole Trae versus New York thing, and he loves it. He feeds off of this. I'm so sad that he's that the Hawks kind of fell the way they did this year, because that presence is needed in the playoffs. That villain potential is needed in the playoffs. They are looking like they're going to miss John Collins. He's out pretty much indefinitely. So at this point, I'm not looking at any magic run for the Hawks. They never really got their defense together this year. It's an unfortunate thing. But yeah, Trae versus New York is not really a rivalry, man. It's it's like there's Trae Young and then there's the Knicks, and Trae just, I don't want to say he owns the Knicks, but 4-1 in the playoffs. Come back this season, he drops, how many points was that? 40 something, almost 50 in the Garden. It's, again, he's just done a lot of damage to that. He's just done a lot of damage to that franchise. It's a lot. Trae, if you're, which All NBA team would you have him on? Not sure, but he's definitely gonna make one still. Like regardless, he's had an All NBA season as a passer, as a playmaker, as a scorer. His work has been there. His work is spoken for. I don't think you really have to debate that. And this just in, bro. Today might be the shortest podcast of the season because I just lost my entire appetite. My mood for the week is ruined. This is how Mondays begin, bro. I haven't had a good week in 2022. Just in from Shams. Boston Celtics center Robert Williams is feared to have suffered a meniscus tear in his left knee. It could lead to an indefinite absence, which would be a tough loss for the Celtics. Okay. First of all, if anything sounds different, it's because I was just I was on the call for Team Tommy. I am working with Tommy Hilfiger on a collaboration with Twitch, so y'all will hear about that soon. Be back to regular streaming. And my face went blank in the meeting. It was like 100 people in that meeting. I looked at my own face when I read this news. I don't think I stressed at the beginning of this podcast how serious I was when I said I actually imagined this in my head. And I imagined it being either Robert Williams or Jason Tatum. Watching the Wolves yesterday, I saw how perfect things were going. And I literally, in my head, was going, bro, like, because I was just thinking, nothing really has gone right since 2008. As a Celtics fan, nothing has gone all the way right. There's always been something that happened. I remember Paul Pierce had a knee infection one time. He disappeared for 2 weeks. He had to have surgery. KG's knee, Ray Allen's ankle went bad. Jeff Green, heart surgery. Fucking Kyrie Irving's knee, something went loose in his knee from his surgery, and then he, in the middle of a contending season, he disappeared. Gordon Hayward's ankle snapped one day. Nothing has gone right just for a full season since 2008. So watching the Wolves game yesterday, and I promise you, I saw Robert Williams switched on to somebody on the perimeter. I'm like, man, this is just too perfect. What if something happened to him? He's so important to our defense, the way he floats around and comes from the weak side, and how we're able to kind of pretty much keep him out of actions of being always in the pick and roll. Like, he's so important to our defense right now. What if something happened to him? Or what if something happened to Tatum? Because Tatum fell, and then I was just like, oh, damn, is he grabbing his ankle? I don't think you understand how much of a self-fulfilling prophecy this is. I am about to lose it. The Boston Celtics are not winning anything without Robert Williams. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. Y'all, I'm out of here, bro. I'm out of here. I'm gone for the day. Enjoy the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I had nothing else to talk about anyways. Like button, rate the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'll see y'all next week, maybe.